Okay, so this is a video that I really want to make. A lot of people are saying that indie games are the future of gaming because, unfortunately, the AAA industry has been putting out disaster and disappointment time and time again, and there's really no sign in the immediate future that that's going to change. So indie games are what people should be keeping their eye on, and indie gaming is going to rise up. And it kind of already has. I can agree with that to a certain point. When I talk about stuff like this, my goal isn't to be overly negative or overly doomer. It's to be as realistic as I possibly can be. And when it comes to indie games, that's really no exception. There are plenty of indie games that have done incredibly well, and they have a lot of fresh ideas and good things. But just because you're an indie game doesn't necessarily mean that people should just give you the benefit of the doubt. Indie gaming is home to a lot of fresh and new ideas, but having a fresh and new idea doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good one. Now, the way that I use good, or the way that I just used good, is it's incredibly subjective. Who gets to determine the quality of something that's never been attempted before? It's really hard. Trust me, I know. When in the terms of a video game, a new idea and its quality are based off of whether or not it's fun, which should be pretty obvious to anybody who plays video games, but you'd be surprised at how that's almost never the case. I want to take, for example, Goblin Cleanup. I covered it on the channel, and it's got a very simple premise. Basically, you go and you clean up a dungeon after a group of adventurers failed to clear it. You clean up the blood, the meat chunks, reset all of the traps, and get it ready for somebody else to give it another try. It's a unique idea in that there are other cleanup games, Power Wash Simulator, Viscera Cleanup Detail, etc., but there's not really a whole lot of context behind how the mess gets made. And you could say that that's the case with Goblin Cleanup, but there's something satisfying about being able to deduce on your own how an adventurer died. How the blood stains correlate to a piece of treasure that you found in a very specific spot on the floor. Things of that nature. That idea is unique and it's new, but why does it work? Well, I just kind of described why it works. It's satisfying to sort of play detective while you're cleaning up this mess and getting it ready. It's fun to think about how adventurers are going to struggle with specific traps because they're giving you trouble while you're cleaning up. On the opposite hand of the spectrum, we have indie games that unfortunately miss the mark, despite also having unique and new ideas. For this example, I would pull the Forever Winter. They go out of their way to build up the world as a very hostile environment, and you as the player are at the bottom of the totem pole. As a third-person shooter game, that idea is definitely going against the grain of pre-established ideals. But the problem is that if you're not going to be the hero of the story, and you're never going to be the hero of the story, the game developers needed to do a good job making being at the bottom of the totem pole fun. Even if it is hard and very brutal. They needed to make being the lowest on the rung, they needed to make that fun. They needed to make it something that players were excited to do. How do you go about doing something so strange? I mean, how do you make being weak appealing to players who are used to being a powerhouse? I could think of a couple of good examples. For example, they have a faction system where you build up reputation with one of, I think, 3 or 4 factions. And that's pretty standard for these sorts of games. Games in general always have factions. What if instead of just building up reputation with the promise of having more items or, whatever available in your hideout, they gave you a beacon? A beacon that you could use to call that specific faction to come help you if you were ever in a pinch. Obviously, it wouldn't be for free. Instead of making you pay money for their help or their assistance or water or some other resource, you actually use your own reputation to do so. And the more reputation you have, the bigger and badder reinforcements will come to help you. So, at a low reputation, a couple of grunt soldiers will come, maybe in the hopes of just picking your corpse clean if you're dead by the time they get there. Maybe they'll take out whatever took you out, and they'll just take all of the rewards for themselves. Nothing too serious, but if they do find you, they'll help you. A little bit, kinda, sorta, maybe. As you move up the reputation, they'll start to send, a bigger squad that will respond to you much faster. And then at the highest tier of reputation, they're sending in, SEAL Team 6 deploying in 30 seconds on your location. Your reward for bringing them important scraps and various things that they need for their particular faction is you become a much higher value to them, and they're willing to spend a little bit more resources to make sure that you get out alive and continue to help them. So they're dropping in mechs, elite squads of snipers, saturation bombardments on the expected target location in the hopes of getting you out alive. But then they get you out and they're like, okay, well, we're glad we were able to help you, but we did use a whole lot of resources to get you out of that situation, so your reputation has definitely gone down. We're going to need you to bring us, a super mega core battery for our trouble if you ever want us to do that again. So, instead of losing your resources or money or anything like that, they're basically subtracting your time investment, and that in turn would make you want to spend more time scavenging on their behalf. So, you're not exactly fighting more enemies or tougher enemies yourselves. You're calling in your big brother to do it for you, and watching as the fight unfolds, or escaping while the fight unfolds. Whatever the case may be. That would be a pretty exciting way to keep the player weak and struggling, but make them want to keep doing it anyway. For an example, when it comes to indie games, that sort of thing is incredibly important, because a lot of times they'll throw out something that no one's ever done before, and then you'll play it and you're like, yeah, I've never experienced anything like it, and I hope I never do ever again. The Ascendant is trying to reinvent, established shooter game modes, and it's like, yeah, sure, technically this is something that nobody else is doing, but maybe there's a reason why. Anyway, all of that is to say that indie games aren't going to have it easier just because they don't have focused test groups and, different political agendas breathing down their neck to reach deadlines and meet expectations that are damn near impossible. They still have quite a bit of work that they have to do in order to be appealing, more than just being a fresh new idea. But let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in another video.